looking to maximise their profits rather investing for the long term in the farms on the ground in West Africa. And that's the huge problem that is now accentuated by bigger and bigger climate variability.
Douglas Lamb, boss, change the chocolate loaded there. Precious commodity if you've still got any chocolate eggs left at home.
Well, thank you. 28 minutes past 6 to Carthy. Giggling there in the background.
No chocolate for me every weekend, that's why. No, yeah, really, no, definitely. Anyway, somebody can buy me a chocolate this morning if possible. It is Liverpool that finished the Easter weekend top of the Premier League table after their 2-1 win over Brighton, combined with title rivals Manchester City and Arsenal cancelling each other out later yesterday in a 0-0 draw. Liverpool are 2 points clear of Arsenal, and it was the first time that City had failed to score at home in the Premier League since October 2021. The Arsenal manager Mikel Arteta was pleased his team was involved with that statistic.
With a clean sheet, I think it's 3 years since this team hasn't scored at home.
57 games.
Yeah, so that tells you the difficulty of it and what the boys have done today, and we still want to be better and disappointed with certain situations. So that tells you how much the team wants it.
Pep Guardiola's Manchester City side are in third place. That's 3 points off leaders Liverpool.
What can I say? Exceptional players, human beings we have. So we did everything against a really good team. We tried to, well, we did everything. We didn't create that much chances. They didn't create either. So, yeah, we take the point and still no games to play.
When Guardiola says no games to play, he means the top 3 have all now played the same number of games. Celtic returned to the top in the Scottish Premiership after a 3-0 win over Livingston, and extra time was needed before Arsenal came away from Molineux. As winners of the Women's League Cup, they beat Chelsea 1-0. That ends Chelsea's chance of winning the quadruple in manager Emma Hayes' last season with the club. Cricket, and in the last couple of hours, England women have won the first one-day international against New Zealand by 4 wickets in Wellington. Henry Moran reports.
Having bowled well to reduce New Zealand to 207 all out in the first ODI, England quickly found themselves staring a heavy defeat on a blustery day in Wellington. At 79 for 6, they were rocking, but Amy Jones and Charlie Dean played with patience and then counter-attacking flair to score an unbroken 130, a world record 7th wicket partnership. Jones' 92 and Dean's 42 weren't their highest England scores, but these were surely their best innings for their country given the match situation. The win gives England a 1-0 lead in the 3-match series. The next game begins late on Wednesday evening.
In Rugby Union's Premiership, Sale had a bonus point 41-5 win over Exeter. Sale are now only 4 points off the playoff places, and Italy beat Ireland 27 points to 21. In the Women's Six Nations yesterday, England are top of the table after 2 games. The Australian Open tennis champion Yannick Sinner has won the Miami Open, beating Grigor Dimitrov, and Sinner moves to become the world number 2 today. Racing tips this morning: Fakenham 127, number 3 Camarat, and Kempton 330, number 4 Cello.
I'm going to bring you an egg in.
Oh, thank you. I knew somebody would if I mentioned it.
Got too many extra bees in all effect. What's happened? Birmingham exploded.
On BBC iPlayer.
Stepped up. Go on, do your duty.
I know, Mum. I just want this band to work. I need it to work.
If you don't get away, you just become what everybody already thinks you are.
This time.
We'll take over the whole world.
Watch on BBC iPlayer.
A new law has come into force in Scotland, making it illegal to stir up hatred relating to age, disability, religion, or gender identity. Police officers have warned it will make their jobs harder and lead to a huge increase in crimes being reported. There are also concerns the legislation will curb free speech, but Scottish ministers say there are safeguards against this, such as a right to offend, shock or disturb. The Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza says Israeli forces have withdrawn from the complex housing the territory's main hospital, Al-Shifa. After 2 weeks of fighting and bombardment, witnesses say Israeli tanks and armoured vehicles streamed out of the area overnight. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said more than 200 Palestinian fighters had been killed at Al-Shifa, which he said had become a terrorist lair. The Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has suffered a major political blow in the country's local elections. It was his AK party's biggest ever defeat in such a contest. The main opposition party, CHP, achieved its largest victory in almost half a century. It won in all 5 of the largest urban centres including Ankara and Istanbul. Free childcare has become available to working parents of 2-year-olds in England. It entitles them to 15 hours of publicly funded care per week. The government hopes the plan will encourage more people into work. Analysis by Ofsted has found there are 1,000 fewer childcare places than there were when the plan was announced a year ago. Average energy prices in England, Wales and Scotland have fallen to their lowest point in 2 years. Regulator Ofgem has lowered the price gap by 12%. It means a typical household will pay £1,690 a year, £238 less. The use of cannabis has been partly legalised in Germany. As part of plans aimed at tackling the sale of the drug on the black market, adults can now carry up to 25 grams of cannabis for personal use and grow 3 plants.
Thank you. 27 minutes to 7 is the time. Scotland goes down a road today that the rest of the United Kingdom has not travelled. A hate crime law that criminalises behaviour designed to stir up hatred against anyone on a list of potential victims. Let's talk to David Wallace-Lockhart, Scotland's political correspondent. It's quite a long list, isn't it, David? But it doesn't include everyone.
That's right, Justin. So this law was passed back in 2021. It was controversial there. That controversy has flared back up in recent weeks as the implementation date of today was approaching. Now, stirring up racial hatred is already illegal in Scotland, but what this law does is it criminalises threatening or abusive behaviour, which is intended to stir up hatred against someone based on other characteristics. They are age, disability, religion, sexual orientation, transgender identity and being intersex. As you mentioned, some upset about the fact that, for example, sex is not included on those lists, so some complaining about a lack of protection for women, though the Scottish Government does stress that it's planning to bring forward legislation based on misogyny in the near future. Now, there's a lot of concern as well about what this act means for free speech, but the Scottish Government are stressing that they believe free speech provisions are based into the legislation. People can still shock, people can still offend, and this is based on the judgment of a reasonable person and what they would find would be stirring up hatred.
Meanwhile, a lot of effort for the police, an effort that at least some in the Scottish police force don't think is the right way to be going.
Absolutely. So it's criticism of this legislation on two fronts, really. Those who have the concern about free speech, and there are some big names there, including the likes of Elon Musk and J.K. Rowling, who don't like the sound of it. But then there is concern coming from the police and the union that represents police officers in Scotland, the Scottish Police Federation as well, about what this could mean for workload. Because Police Scotland have said that they will investigate every accusation of hate crime, but this is at a time when policing is stretched in Scotland, and it's actually at a time when Police Scotland don't actually investigate every crime, including some low-level thefts. So some feeling their police time is going to be sucked up by looking into complaints about who said what on social media when officers could be doing something else. And the Scottish Government are saying that they've provided record police funding and training for Police Scotland so that this law can be overseen.
More on this at 8:10, David Wallace-Lockhart. Thank you.
24 minutes to 7, let's take a look at the morning's front pages. The King beams out of many of those front pages. Return of the King is the headline in the Sun. King's show of strength is the headline in the Mirror. Charles's handshake, clear a sign that he's getting better, reports the Mail, with Robert Hartman, veteran follower of these things, author of a big new book we've discussed on this programme as well about King Charles, saying he'd not expected handshakes. You may recall, he writes that in the early days of the pandemic, the King introduced what he called the Royal Namaste, with palms pressed together as if in prayer as a substitute for a handshake, or that distinctly un-royal odds on to the elbow bump. One hopes he wrote.
Long waits in April do kill 250 people every week is the headline in the Work at Times, and the Mail, 250 needless deaths each week due to agonising waits. So more than 250 people now dying because of those waits in A&E. This is from emergency physicians, because released by emergency physicians. It's excess deaths among those who wait more than 12 hours for a bed. A rebuff, the Times says, to Rishi Sunak's £1 billion pledge last year to improve urgent and emergency care by cutting long waiting lists. And the Mail saying in his piece that the Royal College of Emergency Medicine estimates that 1 in 72 of those patients will have died because they were left in the rooms or on trolleys before a place of war became available. The figures are described in the Mail as a conservative estimate.
Remember that surprise move by the Chancellor Jeremy Hunt in his budget? It wasn't a surprise on the day, but it certainly was when it leaked out that he would scrap non-dom tax status, a status that he said was important to keep, and in fact criticised the Labour Party's plans for scrapping it. Well, The Guardian has a story it describes as exclusive. Plan to scrap non-dom tax status is full of loopholes. That's in quotations. Quotations come from the Labour Party. They've done an analysis in which they say there are loopholes that are worth hundreds of millions of pounds for the wealthiest people, and they claim that it could, poor this I suspect, theoretically see Rishi Sunak's family benefit from tax savings of nearly £250 million. The detail of those tax loopholes is not entirely clear in this piece, but they exist.
The Eye, in its main story, says that Rishi Sunak's small boats plan is at risk from Home Office indecisions. Key elements of the Prime Minister's flagship policy to stop the boats have been given red at-risk ratings because of failures by ministers, including James Cleverly, to make decisions. So outstanding decisions on how to implement the Illegal Migration Act, include which groups should be exempt from the duty to remove. The Eye is being told. Also, they're waiting on decisions on the treatment of unaccompanied children, and they suggest, these sources who have talked to the Eye, that the delays mean that the whole thing could be delayed another year before the law is finally implemented.
Which will not please the Prime Minister's critics. On the front page, it's not their lead story, the kick is, but on the front page of the Sun, 5k land in new record. That's the number of people who have arrived. It says Easter Sunday saw this year's small boat migrants total search March 5,000. Interesting story at the bottom of the Telegraph, relevant to what we're talking about with this new law in Scotland about what the police do and do not regard as a hate crime. This is a story that was on social media yesterday with a police officer telling someone complaining about a swastika being displayed as pro-Palestinian march, saying the officer, everything needs to be taken within context, doesn't it? Being asked by the woman challenging the officer about that placard with the Nazi symbol, under what context is a swastika not disrupting public order?
The time 20 to 7, the main headline is that new law has come into force in Scotland, making it illegal to stir up hatred based on age, religion, sexual orientation and gender identity. Critics saying, though, that it will stifle free speech, and the police warning that it could damage public trust in officers. People can smoke cannabis in Germany in public from today. The party running contentious debate. The rules around medical marijuana are also being relaxed, as our Berlin correspondent Jessica Parker reports from the city of Dresden.
Hast du einen Tipp gemacht?
Nee.
Ich mache hier, das ist schon okay. Machen wir uns.
A group of young men smoke cannabis in a park. Over 18s can now possess up to 25 grams of the drug in public, enough for dozens of joints, and grow up to 3 plants at home. This is Neustadt, the heart of Dresden's alternative scene, where we meet Marcel Ritschel.
Some German people drink their beer after work, and we just want to smoke more weed.
He wants to set up a newly allowed, not-for-profit cannabis social club.
Like a gardening club, but for health.
To grow and distribute the drug to members.
Every gram from cannabis, which goes from the cannabis social club, is one gram that's not on the black market.
What do you say to people? You say, look, cannabis is addictive and it is harmful, especially to young people.
Everything has dark sides, and you have to know about the dark sides, and only when it's not illegal you can freely talk about these dark sides.
Legalisierung weiterer Drogen den Konsum bei Kindern und Jugendlichen eindämmen werden. Das ist der größte Blödsinn, den ich je gehört habe, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen.
There was a stormy debate in Parliament over these changes, which are controversial and complex. The social clubs will be for German residents only, to guard against cannabis tourism, but they can't open until July, Alexander Teutz from the German police union believes demand will outstrip legal supply.
Wir vermuten, dass der Schwarzmarkt gestärkt werden wird.
We assume that the black market will be strengthened, particularly at the beginning of the chaos phase, when demand will be great because of the signal this law sends. The black market and criminal networks will adapt, and they will also infiltrate the social clubs.
Just outside Dresden, I wash my hands and put on an overall. The building I'm in used to be a slaughterhouse, now being used to grow medical. And they're nearly ready to be harvested. That's probably going to happen in the next couple of weeks. The new rules mean facilities like this will be able to grow and sell more. Philip Goebel is a managing director of Demican.
Cannabis will not be a narcotic anymore in Germany. It will be just as any other pharmaceutical product, which makes it much more easier for patients to get it from a doctor and to get it from the pharmacy. So we think that the volume will double by end of the year, starting from the last year. We think it will take time for doctors and for patients to get used to it, to buy it in the pharmacy in the end.
An intricate water system feeds these plants. The benefits of medical cannabis are debated, while arguments around the relaxation of recreational use have dripped through German society for years. That'll likely continue. Conservatives have promised to reverse the changes if they get into power.
Jessica Butler reporting from Dresden. The time 16 minutes to 7. 3 of the Oxford rowing team defeated by Cambridge in the boat race had a stomach bug before the race. They said they couldn't confirm that E. coli in the Thames was responsible. Of course they couldn't, but there are suspicions. They'd already said that pollution in that river was a disgrace, a national disgrace, something I put to Chris Weston, the CEO of Thames Water, just before the race.
I don't want to pollute rivers, and nor does anyone in Thames Water.
Is it a national disgrace?
And I would point out that E. coli has many different sources. It's not just from sewage, it is also from land runoff, it is from highway runoffs, it is from animal feces. All of those things contribute to the problem, and I am absolutely determined that at Thames we will play our part in cleaning up the problem. And so the Thames is a river that people can use as they would like to every day.
Well, there's a whole new set of suggestions today from the British Ecological Society about what needs to be done to make that happen. Professor Carolyn Roberts is on the line. He's Professor Emeritus of the Environment at Gresham College, Water Management Consultant as well herself. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Just a quick thought about the boat race in the Thames. I mean, plainly, at least 3 people were ill, and equally plain, it's impossible to know exactly why, isn't it? But their suspicions are reasonable, aren't they?
Indeed they are, and I think the Thames Water would be very unwise to ignore that possibility.
Yeah, because they say, I mean, it is true, isn't it, what he says. It can come from land runoff, it can come from highways runoff, or from animal feces as well, and all of those things contribute to the problem. That is a reasonable defence, is it?
Well, it is a form of defence. I think.
Right, you're not using the word reasonable.
Well, sewage spills or sewage dumping, I think, is one of the things that would be, in theory, most straightforward to address, and some of the others are much more difficult. So it depends from whose point of view you're looking at it, I suppose, what is reasonable.
No, well, that is interesting in itself, in that it's simple, but of course expensive, and that's, I suppose, the issue here, isn't it?
Indeed, yes, it is simple and it is expensive, but in fact the water companies have had many years to try and address this issue. It's been a long time coming, and very little has been done, in my opinion.
What needs to be done now?
Well, I think, I mean, the source of the coli, the E. coli, as you said earlier, is multiple. But in terms of sewage, I mean, sewage is getting into sewer system. Sewage is getting out of sewer systems. It's leaking into or through overflows. It's also coming out from sewage treatment plants deliberately by dumping, I would say, and also more recently, I also suspect that it's coming as a result of sewage being part treated but inadequately treated, and passed through sewage treatment plants too quickly, so that the bacteria is not fully removed. So all of those things need investment, and I think something has to be done fairly quickly. In my opinion, rivers are a national heritage. They're something which we all should be enjoying, and it's not right that certain companies should be profiting by damaging that heritage.
Do we monitor properly?
Well, we do monitor. We monitor a lot less than we used to, actually. And part of the problem is that the sewage comes in pulses into rivers. It comes into pulses that may happen quite quickly. And our sewage, our monitoring of water quality in rivers is probably not adequate to pick that up. So the pulses may well be coming between the sampling times.
That is an awful thought, actually, isn't it? Because we are very aware that there is sewage in rivers, but you're saying we might not be as aware as we should be.
Indeed, we might be only sampling, for example, at low flow conditions, and therefore missing the times of peak concentrations of these bacteria.
Professor Carolyn Roberts, thank you very much.
11 minutes to 7 now. Our prisons are full, so full that ministers admit they'll have to release some prisoners early in order to open up new space for those newly convicted by the courts, but a promise to build 20,000 new prisons proved impossible to deliver given delays caused by the planning system, which has led Labour to say that emergency planning power should be used to build the prison places that we need. What's the view of the man who chairs the Justice Select Committee in the House of Commons? They are carrying out an inquiry into justice into prison capacity, and he is the Conservative MP, Sir Bob Neill. Good morning to you, Sir Bob.
Good morning, Nick.
Let's begin with the crisis. I've often heard over the years that we're near crisis point. How near do you think we are?
We really are up against the edge. It's in a situation where the Lord Chancellor, Justice Secretary Alex Chalk, has repeatedly warned that we could run out of prison places within the next few weeks. It is that bad. We're having to take emergency measures, special emergency cells, temporary use cells, which can't be suitable long term, being used. So we really need to get a grip on this.
We need new prisons, and that means the Ministry of Justice has applied to build new prisons. But I think I'm right in saying that every single one has been turned down by the local authority to which there's been an application.
And that's right. Now, some have now made progress on appeal, but that has taken an awful lot more delay in the process, as you can imagine. So it has slowed it up, and we are not going to meet the target that was originally announced of having those 20,000 new places by 2026. That was 10 years ago, and we're still nowhere near. We're going to have a shortfall, very clear, on the evidence that our committee has already received.
So that is why your committee, and indeed now we hear Labour, are considering this idea of saying prisons are of national importance. Just translating the jargon, what that basically means, isn't it? Which is you can build a prison even if local people and local councils object.
Well, we haven't finalised our recommendations as a committee yet, but it's something I personally have called for on several occasions in Parliament over the last year or so. And the logic of it is this. If, as a matter of national policy, we say that we need to continue to imprison high numbers of people, more actually than our neighbours in Europe, that's a matter of public policy. You need, as a matter of strategy, to deliver the means of that public policy. Just in the same way as we regard power stations, for example, or transport capacity, and you railway lines, roads, as critical national infrastructure. The case is that prisons should be treated in the same way. That's what we want to do as a matter of policy. At the moment, both major parties seem to sign up to more prison sentences for people. Then you've got to will the means, and therefore you have to be honest with the public. And so you've got to treat that as a matter of national infrastructure. That means that it must be speeded through the planning process. The corollary is, as you see perhaps in France and other countries, you then give the communities, the immediate neighbours, a better rate of compensation to offset their taking a hit for the greater good.
But I imagine, Sir Bob, if somebody said, can we build a new super max prison in Sir Bob Neill's constituency, there'd be huge objections in the area you represent, and you'd be tempted as a local representative to argue with that and say, not on your Nelly, why don't you do